to Newsround, a recap of stories that made headlines during the week. Coming up, President Bola Tinubu presents 27.5 trillion naira 2024 budget of renewed hope to the National Assembly. Says it will ensure microeconomic stability, poverty reduction, greater access to social security, amongst others. And Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Olukayode Ariwola, urges judges to maintain the integrity that the judiciary is known for and remain fair and firm in their judgments. African Development Bank President Dr. Akinwumi Adesina says Africa has no excuse to be poor, urges government must realize their responsibility to lift people out of poverty as quickly as possible. Plus, fighting resumes in Gaza after a 7-day truce between Israel and Hamas expires. And that's Newsround in view. To begin now, President Bola Tinubu has presented a budget proposal of 27.5 trillion naira to the joint session of the National Assembly for the 2024 fiscal year. In his first budget presentation to the federal lawmakers since assuming office, President Tinubu identified 3 key areas: security, job creation, and poverty reduction as priority in the 2024 budget.
The president makes his way into the chamber of the National Assembly amidst exchange of pleasantries with lawmakers who are already seated for a special joint session. It is President Bola Tinubu's first presentation of the appropriation bill to the National Assembly since he assumed office in May this year. President of the Senate as well as the Speaker of the House of Representatives welcome President Tinubu, who thereafter takes his seat as the President of the Senate opens the session with his remarks.
This is a significant milestone in our nation's journey toward progress and development. The presentation of the budgetary estimates sets the course for our nation's fiscal policies and priorities for the coming year.
The 2024 appropriation bill, pegged at 27.5 trillion naira, is based on some key economic assumptions, including oil price benchmark of $77 per barrel, with projected oil production capacity of 1.78 million barrels per day, an exchange rate of 750 naira to a dollar, a GDP growth rate of 3.76%, a 21.4% inflation rate. Although the government expects to generate 18 trillion naira in revenue, the deficit stands at 9 trillion naira. President Tinubu begins his 2024 budget presentation tagged Budget of Renewed Hope by highlighting his policy focus, excluding the sectoral breakdown of allocation of the 27.5 trillion naira estimates.
Despite the global headwind, the Nigerian economy has proven resilient, maintaining moderate but positive growth over the past 12 months. Inflation has trended upward, yes, due to the weak global conditions. To contain this rising domestic prices, we will ensure effective coordination of fiscal and monetary policy measures and collaborate with subnational governments to address structural factors driving in inflation in Nigeria. The budget proposal meets our goal of completing critical infrastructure projects, which will help address structural problems in the economy by lowering the cost of doing business for companies and the cost of living for average person.
If the aspiration of the $1 trillion GDP economy in less than 10 years is to be achieved, the president believes the fundamentals and security should be fixed.
Defense and internal security are recorded top priority. The internal security architecture will be overhauled to enhance law enforcement capabilities and safeguard lives, property, and investment across the country. Human capital is the most critical resource of national development. Accordingly, the budget prioritizes human development with particular attention to children, the foundation of our nation.
The fiscal policy estimates, according to the president, will leverage on innovation, collaboration, and more.
A critical focus of this budget and the medium-term expenditure framework is Nigeria's commitment to greener future, emphasizing public-private partnership. We have strategically made provision to leverage private capital for big-ticket infrastructure projects in energy, transportation, and other sectors.
He then lays the appropriation bill before the legislators. The Speaker of the House of Representatives commends the audacious policy posture of the President and promises him of legislative support.
The National Assembly will support the government policies and programs targeted at alleviating poverty, economic restructuring and diversification, as well as social sector reform and developments.
The 2024 appropriation bill, as presented by President Tinubu, provides a guide for the 2024 fiscal year in line with his renewed hope agenda to meet the yearnings of Nigerians.
And still on the 2024 budget, the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Economy, Mr. Wale Edu, says in order to stabilize the Nigerian economy for rapid inclusive growth, there's going to be less reliance on borrowing. Mr. Edu stated this during the breakdown of the 2024 budget proposal by the Minister of Budget and Economic Planning, Mr. Bubakar Bagudu, in Abuja. He adds that the budget deficit has been brought down from 6.1% of GDP to about 3.88%.
Few hours after President Bola Tinubu presented his first budget estimates to the National Assembly, the Ministry of Budget and Economic Planning gives a breakdown of the proposals. The Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Mr. Wale Edu, give more insights on the assumptions in the budget and explains why the federal government wants to reduce borrowing.
The of travel is that in order to stabilize the Nigerian economy for rapid inclusive growth, there is going to be less reliance on borrowing. The budget deficit is being brought down from about 6.1% of GDP to 3.88% of GDP. That's a huge change in direction from unlimited and limitless borrowing to focusing on revenue, and as we heard earlier from Mr. President, focusing on expenditure management to give value for money with expenditure and to raise revenue. And we heard that the key target is to increase tax to GDP, the proportion of tax to GDP from roughly under 10% now to 18% by the time of, in a couple of years' time.
The Minister of Budget and Economic Planning, Mr. Atiku Bagudu, presents the sectoral breakdown of the budget. According to the Minister, defense and security, education, health, infrastructure and social development and poverty reduction are the top 5 allocations. The debt servicing is expected to go up 9.18 trillion naira. The minister explains that the budget is designed to address fiscal challenges and improve domestic economic situations.
The budget that was presented today to the National Assembly, and I believe was well received by the National Assembly and Nigerians, has been prepared against the backdrop of continuing global and domestic challenges. Overall fiscal risks have increased following weaker than expected domestic economy performance and structural issues in the domestic economy.
A review of the 2023 budget reveals that only 25% of the capital budget has been released as of September 2023. Mr. Ben Akabweze gives further insight into the plans of the new administration.
This is a transition year. We're transiting from one president to another. The last time we had a transition year like that was 2015. In 2015, the budget was not presented until actually mid-December, so 1 month later than we are doing even now. So it is, normal to expect a new administration to settle down, get a handle around things, and ensure that, because the budget is not just a mere statement of revenues and expenses. The budget really is arguably the government's most important policy statement every year. It's also worthy of note that the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's administration has already, in quick succession, presented 2 supplementary budgets for 2023 to quickly address, exigent measures. So clearly, the administration has been hard at work to address, fiscal, issues.
The administration is hoping that the budget will meet the expectations of Nigerians and improve the nation's gross domestic product. Benny Ark, Channels Television News.
I will now go to the upper and lower chambers of the National Assembly, where the 2024 appropriation is scaled second reading after a 2-day debate. While some lawmakers were concerned about the plan of the government to generate revenue from taxes, fearing that it will greatly affect importers, others say the proposed 1.7 million barrels per day crude production is unrealistic.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
It's the second allotted day for debate on the general principles of the 2024 appropriation bill, themed Budget of Renewed Hope.
Mr. Speaker,
some lawmakers do not agree with the 1.78 million barrels projected as crude production in the budget.
We know that since 2020, the country has not been able to achieve up to 1.9. Therefore, yes, we have declared emergency oil theft, but we need to do more. The hungry opinion in the oil sector is that in the past 10 years, the multinationals have refused to carry out any critical investment in oil production in Nigeria. 10 years of non-investment to produce oil is part of the reason we have this decline.
For some time now, we have had peace within and around the Niger Delta region. It's just because of the impact of the presidential messaging that is happening around the Niger Delta region with the ex-agitators. Nobody is talking about vandalization and blowing up of oil pipeline. And with that, Mr. Speaker, if we can sustain it in this country, we will do better than what we are doing. And we even surpass the 1.7 million expectation in production of oil barrel.
The tax aspect of revenue generation is also questioned.
My former colleagues in business world who are predominantly importers, they are saying this revenue of 18 trillion. I hope that I will not sit here and allow the custom and exercise to start taxing them so astronomically at the port.
The bill scales second reading as the House prepares to hold a citizens' town hall meeting to gather inputs for the budget. In the upper chamber, the senators continue to illuminate the merits of the bill.
The target around inflation, I think, is important, and that is one of the major things that affect the common man. Yes, we have seen a target of 21%, but again, both the fiscal and the monetary authorities, there must be some kind of understanding.
The oil production targets, borrowing trajectory, and funding deficits come to the fore.
We need to look at the debt of the country with the view to doing something, maybe to renegotiate even the funding, where it has been said that 7.8 is to be borrowed. Borrowing is not wrong. It is what you do with the money that you borrow that matters.
I took time to go and look through the budget, and we're seeing that what was put for power was just about 3% of the total budget. Well, how would 3% of the total budget deal with an issue that is fundamental to the economy? Because if you don't have power, you do nothing. Every other thing that we are talking about How would that work?
The senators maintain that the budget must address the protracted issue of the East-West Road and agriculture.
This government, by what they have presented, has not demonstrated the requisite commitment. Budgeting has not been taken seriously. So I want to say, Mr. President, that this National Assembly and this Senate in particular should use our powers to allocate more funds to see to the completion of the East-West Road.
Like the House, the 2024 appropriation bill scales second reading in the Senate, and committees now have 2 weeks to conclude the budget defense process. Terry Ikumi, Channels Television News.
Welcome back. Well, to the judiciary now, where the Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Olukayode Ariwoola, is asking judges to maintain the integrity the judiciary is known for and remain fair and firm in their judgments. Justice Ariwoola was speaking at the opening of the special session of the 2023-2024 legal year and conferment of senior advocates of Nigeria and 58 legal practitioners in Abuja.
The ceremonial courtroom of the Supreme Court comes alive with the conferment of senior advocates of Nigeria on 58 lawyers. They are joined by family and friends. In attendance are former Chief Justices of Nigeria, retired justices of the court, and other top government officials. The justices led by the Chief Justice of Nigeria arrive. The new Sikhs thereafter take the oath of allegiance.
In the capacity of senior advocate of Nigeria, and to that end, in support.
The CJN uses the occasion to address recent happenings in the judiciary. While pledging to safeguard the rule of law, the trust and confidence of the public, the CJN reiterated the determination of the judiciary not to be overwhelmed by the sentiments of the public in their decisions.
The law remains the law, no matter whose interest is involved. In all we do, as interpreters of the law, we should endeavor to sever the strings of emotion from logic and assumption from fact. We should never be overwhelmed by the actions or loud voices of the mob.
The Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Lateef Fagbemi, wants the National Judicial Council to intensify efforts on appointing more justices to the Supreme Court.
I would, however, like to use this opportunity to urge the leadership of the National Judicial Council to fast-track the process of achieving a full complement of the Supreme Court and to also concurrently put in place the process of filling the consequential vacancies that will be occasioned at the Court of Appeal to avoid undue delay and minimize disruptions at that level.
The president of the Nigerian Bar Association speaks on the challenges facing the judiciary in recent times.
That is weak, corrupt, and unreflective of the people's aspiration is irrelevant to the people and doomed to collapse with time. All these, I must say, can only be achieved where there is synergy between the bench and the bar. Acts of professional misconduct by members of the bar must be condemned and punished.
A new silk, Mr. Abiodun Olaleru, has a word of advice to other upcoming.
It is without the planning, without the hard work, I suspect that for most people this day may not have come. So it's important for the younger ones coming behind us to always understand and cherish the value of hard work and to know that there are no shortcuts in life.
If the assurances of the Chief Justice of Nigeria is anything to go by, many Nigerians will expect a quick dispensation of justice and full confidence in the judiciary. Emanuela Ekele, Channels Television News.
And the trial of the former governor of the central bank, Mr. Godwin Emefiele, of alleged procurement fraud has commenced at the Federal Capital Territory High Court in Abuja. At a resumed hearing, the EFCC fielded 3 witnesses. The first prosecution witness was a top official of the Corporate Affairs Commission, Mr. Shamsuddin Romanus, told the court that Mr. Emefiele was not the owner or shareholder of the April 1616 Investment Limited, the company awarded 1.2 billion naira vehicle supply contract by CBN under Emefiele. The former CBN boss will however remain in custody since he's not been able to meet his bail conditions.
The former governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Mr. Godwin Emefiele, is back at the Federal Capital Territory High Court for the commencement of his trial. He's standing trial for allegedly conferring corrupt advantages on the staff of CBN, Sadat Yaro, through the contract awards for vehicle supplies worth over 1.6 billion naira, which is contrary to Section 19 of the Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Act 2000. At the commencement of the trial, the prosecution fielded its first witness, Mr. Samshuddin Romanos, while stating that Mr. Emefiele was not the owner or a shareholder of the April 1616 Investment Limited, which awarded the vehicle supplies. He read out the names of the owners of the company. He explains the EFCC has no role in the day-to-day running of affairs of the entity, even though it was responsible for incorporation of the company. The second witness to take the stand is Mr. Remigius Ugu, a compliance officer with Zenith Bank. He told the court how various huge sums of money were paid by the CBN into the April 1616 Investment Limited. While tendering various documents on behalf of the bank, the witness asserted that the former CBN governor was not a signatory to the bank accounts of the company, and none of the payments were linked with Emefiele's name. The third and final witness for the day is Mr. Oluwole Oweye, a deputy director of banking services with CBN and former secretary to Major Contract Tendering Committee. Mr. Oweye told the court that his committee was not involved in the vetting of bidding for the award of the contracts that led to the prosecution of Emefiele. The witness explains that another committee handled the bidding because it was above the thresholds of his own committee. He adds that the MCTC and procurement department were fully functional when Mr. Emefiele was the CBN governor. After taking the testimonies of the three witnesses, the trial judge, Justice Hamza Muazu, subsequently adjourned the case to January the 18th and 19th, 2024 for continuation of trial. Counsel to Mr. Emefiele, Mr. Matthew Booker, who spoke off camera, says his client is yet to meet his bail conditions. Mr. Godwin Emefiele is standing trial on an amended 6-count charge of alleged procurement of vehicles. He was led by prison officials back to the Kuje Correctional Center, pending when he's able to meet his bail conditions. Emanuela Ekele, Channels Television News.
And the president of the African Development Bank, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, says since he assumed office, the financial institution has committed about $10 billion into various spheres of Nigeria's developmental endeavor. Dr. Adesina, who was a guest speaker at a public lecture to commemorate Guardian newspaper's 40th year anniversary, says Africa, and indeed Nigeria, will never earn global respect if poverty is not eradicated on the continent.
It's the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs grounds here in Lagos. Therefore, some serious talk is in the offing.
I use my camera to look for truth.
The Guardian newspaper has been around for 40 years since its first publication, and to mark the time for that length of work, it's chosen a public lecture. Two topics actually. The first is for the world to respect Africa, and the second presentation is on federalism is the answer. A proudly Nigerian export to Africa and to the world, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina starts on this note.
Let me be unequivocally very clear. Poverty is not normal. It is abnormal, especially when we have so much resources and when it has been pervasive for so long. And that is why I believe Africa should not become a museum of poverty.
Doing the numbers, 431 million out of the 1.4 billion people living in Africa live under extreme poverty, and that has increased by 84 million people since the impact of COVID-19 pandemic. It is time for poverty accountability for government, according to the lecturer.
For oil and gas, minerals and metals, it is abundantly clear that there is no transparency or very little of it in, and of course, on accountability for how we manage these abundant resources. If that trend continues, it will be a disaster for Africa.
Dr. Adesina's lecture stretched out through vaccines and health, electricity, energy transition, natural resource as blessings and not curse, food and agriculture as trajectories of change to help Africa and indeed Nigeria earn global respect.
South Korea moved the GDP per capita that was $350 in 1960s when it got independence to approximately $33,000 in 2023. Now that's the kind of quantum leap that we need rather than attempt to be saying we are dealing with alleviating poverty.
Then to the second lecture. Here's the view of an erudite scholar and the Director General of NIIA.
You need people who understand federalism. You need people who would advocate for it. You need people who would defend it. And that is the role that I see the Guardian papers playing today.
In my opinion, Nigeria is not running as a federation, and we should take models like in the US, where each state should be able to develop accordingly at their own speed, instead of relying on the center in Nigeria and Abuja. There are a lot of minerals and resources and human capacity in each state, and I believe they should run independently to extract the best possibilities that they can get from that.
A well-attended event with guests drawn from old and new staff of the organization, its management, scholars, government officials, friends, and others. The warm wishes here by many is for many more successful years for the newspaper organization. Olu Phillips, Channels Television News.
And to end News Round now, Israel has warned civilians to leave southern Gaza as fighting resumes after a 7-day temporary ceasefire that expired Friday morning. Despite diplomatic efforts to secure another extension, the Hamas-run health ministry, Gaza says more than 178 people have been killed since resumption of hostilities, most of whom are women and children. And that's it on News Round. Thank you for watching. I'm Ladi Williams. Bye for now.